allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you, everybody. We'll go ahead and get started. The first issue, I need a motion to approve the agenda for this evening.
So moved.
We have a
second.
We've got a second. There we go. Any suggestions or comments on the agenda? All right, then. Everyone in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Veto, that passes. The next item is a motion to approve the Board of Education meeting minutes for December 3rd.
So moved.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any conversation or questions on that? All right, then, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no.
And one abstention.
One abstention. Next item is Rockwood Patron Comments, but I don't believe we have any comment cards tonight. All right. Next is Superintendent and Board Comments, so I'll turn that over to Dr. Knost.
Thank you very much. Good evening. Good to see everyone. A few fun things to talk about. Congratulations to the 26 students from all 4 Rockwood High Schools that were chosen for the All-State Choir, All-State Band, All-State Orchestra, and All-State Jazz Band. These talented students will perform at the State Music Convention at Tantera in the Ozarks on January the 30th. And 26 students, I can assure you, is very good representation from our school district. That's quite phenomenal. That's a lot of kids to have in those all-state programs. If you think about it, are not all that big when you're considering the whole state. So you have that many of our kids on the stage. That's pretty impressive. And speaking of music, teachers Laura Holzen and Joe Gutowski will also be honored in January. Laura will receive the 2016 Missouri String Teacher Elementary Educator Award, and Joe will receive the Distinguished Service Award. Both awards come from the American String Teachers Association, so congratulations to those 2 outstanding music educators. Last Friday, more than 900 students from Rockwood South Middle School volunteered on a variety of projects. These projects included making holiday cards, decorations, making videos of people reading to children's books, possibly themselves, making fleece blankets, making toys, and a whole lot more for various organizations all around the St. Louis region. Their efforts were covered by the local media, and you can find a link to that on the Rockwood website. So thanks to Rockwood South Middle and all those students who stepped up and gave of their time. Something that was also covered by the local media this week is pretty exciting. The Rockwood Mobile Innovation Center, made possible by a $69,000 grant from the Innovative Technology Education Fund. This mobile STEM lab is making the rounds to the elementary schools in the district, and we also have a great video on our website that gives you a look inside. And definitely encourage you to check that out, and also we'll tell the board and anybody attending that we're happy to tell you in the first January meeting we will have the STEM lab here. And we're keeping that meeting, the agenda, very, very light because of the timing of the meeting right when we come back from break. So Bob Deneau is going to do a very small agenda item presentation, but he's also going to have the mobile van here before the meeting, and because we'll wrap up the meeting very, very quick, we'll have it afterwards too for people to take a look at it. And I'd be remiss not to mention, even though Glenn has changed positions and is no longer our STEM coordinator, he had a lot to do with getting this rolling, and no pun intended, but there's truth to that because it wasn't rolling, but so we're excited about it. And congratulations to the 3 Rockwood students that won the first student Happiness Starts with Yellow poster contest. You don't realize the first student is our contracted bus company. Happiness Starts with Yellow. It was a poster contest. Ella Burstein of Wild Horse Elementary and Ben Winker of Fairway and Megan Baker of Blevins Elementary all won $1,000 for their school. So the money went to their schools for their posters that they submitted. So congratulations to them and their schools. And finally, we don't always have the opportunity to, due to timing, to announce these things, but I do tonight, and I'm thinking about it, so I'm going to. Congratulations to two of our principals, John Shaughnessy from Lafayette High School and Renee Trotter from Rockwood Summit High School are now Dr. Shaughnessy and Dr. Trotter. So congratulations to them. They're not here tonight, but it was on my mind, so I thought I'd state that. That's all I have.
Good. Any other board members have any comments they'd like to make?
Where did they go? Where did they get their doctorate from?
Little bitty school somewhere, Maryville University.
Oh, okay. I do have Matt, Laura Lee, and I, and Eric, and several of the central office administrators and principals attended the SRO breakfast sometime last week, whatever day it was. That was really a nice affair. Terry Harris did an excellent job, and we recognized the SRO officers. I wish they all had been there, but it was really nice with the attendance, and I think that should be a yearly event. And I don't know if we can get Karen Hedrick to give her speech each and every year.
Oh, man.
That was a very moving speech that she gave. And and the reason, because her husband is a state trooper, and she is a middle school principal, and you put those two together, that was perfect for that ceremony.
It was.
Thanks to Terry Harris.
Yeah, the attendance, of course, yeah, it was a great ceremony. It was a great thing to do. But if you had all of the officers here, they wouldn't have any at the school at that moment, so it was constrained by that, but that was good. Any other comments right now? All right, let's move on to the agenda items. And the next one would be a motion to approve the consent agenda items as submitted.
So move.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion or comments on those?
Once again,
Please.
Eric mentioned, or Dr. Canosa mentioned, the students that had won the Happiness is Yellow Bus from 3 different schools. Well, they'll also receive a donation of $1,000. I'm not sure if you mentioned that or not, in the name of the student that submitted the drawing. So that's giving back to the community. Another one is Werther PTO. They donated $1,405 for 5 Chromebooks to be used by students in classrooms to support curriculum. So we get those each and every time. And on the consent agenda, it doesn't always talk about them, or it doesn't show it. You have to look at it. So I'm going to keep bringing those up because those are really very important in Rockwood. Okay.
All right, the motion on the floor is to approve the consent agenda items. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say no. Ms. Vito, that passes. All right, going to the regular agenda items, I think Mr. Rooney's going to join us. I need a motion to accept the 2014-15 audit report, post-audit report, and Secretary of the Board report as presented.
So move.
Second.
A motion and a second.
Doesn't look like Mr. Rooney.
Doesn't look like Mr. Rooney. This says Mr. Rooney right there. Sorry. Welcome.
We've completed the audit of our financial statements for June 30, 2015, and with us tonight to report the results to the board is Brian Wirtz. He's a partner with the auditing firm Kerber & Brendel.
Great, welcome.
Good evening. Thanks for having me. As Dan said, I am Brian Wirtz, a partner with Kerber & Brendel. We're the independent auditors for the school district. Tonight we're here to just discuss a little bit about our audit and then answer any questions that you might have at the end of it. So tonight we are presenting the CAFR, or the annual financial report of the district, and this thing is well over 100 pages long, so it's getting very detailed and very significant. So there's a lot of information in this CAFR. So what this thing includes is the financial statements of the district. Let me talk about first in the introductory section. There is 2 certificates in there for excellence in financial reporting, both from ASBO and GFOA. And the district, when you think about a report that's this big and it gets a certificate of excellence in financial reporting, you should be very proud of that. And that's done every year, and we've gotten this. This year I looked and we had about 8 minor comments from ASBO and about 9 minor comments from GFOA. So We keep knocking them out, and it seems like they always come up with something new. But the district should be commended for that. It's an honor, and they should be proud of getting that. Then in there is the independent audit report, the management discussion and analysis, which is unaudited, and that's prepared by management and describes the current year financial results and future plans for the district. It's unaudited because it's non-financial information, so we can't give an opinion on it, but we do read it and make sure that anything in there that's financial related does not go against what we're saying in the financial statements themselves. Then there's the basic financial statements, or the government-wide financial statements that are presented on the accrual basis of accounting, the fund financial statements that are presented on the modified accrual basis of accounting, and there's a reconciliation between the two. And the biggest reconciling items are on the fund financial statements. A fixed asset is an expense, and on the government-wide financial statements is an asset. When you issue debt, it's a revenue, and when you make payments on debt, it's an expense. And in the government-wide financial statements, it's obviously a liability when you issue the debt, and a reduction in the liability when you make a payment. The other big thing this year is we had to adopt a new GASB, which we'll talk a little bit about later, which the district required the district to pick up their proportionate share of the underfunding of the school retirement system. So we'll talk about that in a minute. Then there's the proprietary type funds, the notes to the financial statements, the required supplemental information, and then we get into the state and federal compliance section of the fund. Now, before we get into the presentation piece of it, I'd just like to discuss a little bit what our responsibilities are when it comes to an audit, and what your responsibilities are when it comes to an audit. It's your responsibility, management, and your responsibility, because you're charged with governance, so you're part of the internal controls of the district, is to prepare the financial statements, determine that the basis used to prepare the financial statements is acceptable, and to design, implement, and maintain internal controls relevant to the preparation and fair presentation of the financial statements, that there would not be a material misstatement. So it's basically that you have to maintain an internal control structure as well. Our responsibility is to audit the financial statements. We perform our audit in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards, governmental auditing standards, and OMB Circular 133 as it relates to federal programs. The objective of our audit is to provide reasonable but not absolute assurance that there's not a material misstatement in the financial statements. And the reason we do that is because we do not do a 100% test of transactions. There is a risk that there could be a material misstatement in the financial statements and go undetected. In planning and perform our audit, we're required to assess risk, develop audit procedures to address those risks, perform the audit procedures, and then issue our opinions. Also, as we're addressing risk as it relates to the financial statements, we do assess fraud risk, and that what we do there is we're required to brainstorm. Everybody on the audit is required to sit in a meeting and we brainstorm where we think fraud could occur, and then we determine if there's any audit procedures that need to be performed as it relates to those risks. We also interview management and employees as to their knowledge if there's any fraud that exists. What would they do? How would they report it if it did? So that's all a part of our audit. Also, as a part of our audit, we review the internal controls of the district, and we get an understanding of the internal controls of the district, but we do not give an opinion on the internal controls. That's outside the scope of an audit. We do test internal controls as it relates to federal programs and compliance with certain compliance requirements of federal programs, but again, we do not give an opinion on the internal controls. The types of audit opinions we can give are an unmodified, a qualified, an adverse, or a disclaimer. So in the CAFR, there's actually 4 opinions. One is on the basic financial statements, which we gave an unmodified opinion, which states that based on the audit procedures we perform, financial statements are in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. Then there are 2 opinions as it relates to federal programs. One related to financial reporting and other matters, and another one that relates to A133, the major federal program. So we gave unmodified opinions on those as well. And then the last one is as it relates to state compliance. As the district budgeting, transportation, and attendance, we're required to audit that, and we give an unmodified opinion on that as well. So going through our thing here. Okay, so the first thing is the engagement team. I am the engagement partner, which means I'm ultimately responsible for the work that was performed in the quality, in accordance with the quality control of KEB, and I'm ultimately responsible for the audit and sign the audit opinion. Rick Razza is the quality control partner, which means he reviewed the financial statements as well. We call it a cold review, look for disclosures before the financial statements could be issued, and then the rest of us are the staff that did most of the work on the audit itself. The planning, scope, and timing of the audit, we did that as it was previously communicated to you in our engagement letter dated May the 11th, 2015. The most significant accounting policies used by the district are Note 1 to the financial statements, which is the summary of significant accounting policies. The district did adopt a new GASB this year, two new GASBs, which is GASB 68 and GASB 71. And this implementation did have a material effect on the financial statements. I'm going to talk about that in a second. There were no transactions entered into by the district during the year which lacked authoritative guidance or consensus, and no significant transactions have been recognized in a different period than when the transaction occurred. We're required to communicate to you that there are estimates in these financial statements, and because the estimates in these financial statements are material, when actual results are come, they could be different than the estimates used in the financial statements, and they could be material, so we're required to disclose that to you. Our responsibility is to evaluate the factors used by management to come up with the estimates and determine that they're reasonable. The financial statement disclosures are neutral, consistent, and clear. And clear might be a stretch, because if you look, the new pension footnote, which was footnote 6, as it relates to pension plans, is 12 pages long. And that's as it relates to the PSRS and peers retirement system. Basically, what the new GASB required the district to do was to record their proportionate share of the underfunding of the liability of PSRS and peers. There was an actuarial evaluation done at June 30, 2013, and another one done at June 2014. Because of the timing of it, the one for June 2015 hasn't been done yet. So the liability we're recording is based on the June 2014 numbers. Just to give you an idea, PSRS at June 30, 2013 the liability was $6 billion. And for 2014 it was $4 billion. So it made up $2 billion in 1 year. The peers was $651 million. And this year was $365 million, so it made up $300 million. And the reason for that, I think, is because it's really related to, I'm not an actuary, it's an actuary evaluation, but it's the results of the assets that are being invested. What's the return on those assets? So I think that's reducing the liability. Plus there's some contributions being made. So all those things come into factor, but it's a big number that the district had to pick up. We encountered no significant difficulties in dealing with management or in performing or completing the audit. There were no audit adjustments or misstatements noted. We had no disagreements with management, and we did get a management representation letter dated December the 11th, which is the date the financial statements were ready to be issued. They were approved and ready to be issued by management. And that's an important date because we're required to review any subsequent events that might happen between June 30th and that date and determine if there is a disclosure that needs to be required or even an adjustment that might need to be made to the financial statements if something happened in that time period. Anything after that date we're not required to review. To our knowledge, the district had no other consultations with any other independent accountants. We discussed throughout the year, we have discussions with management throughout the year, items as it relates to recording GASBs or certain financial transactions, i.e. the new GASBs that we just recorded. But those discussions do not affect our retention as being auditors for the district. The last couple things I don't really want to get into too much because it's just we're required to disclose to you what we do to other supplemental information within the financial statement. So explains what we do as it relates to the schedule of expenditures of federal awards. It talks about on the next page what we do as it relates to required supplementary information, then what we do as it relates to supplementary information, and what we do to the other information that is unaudited. So I really want to get into detail on that. So if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Brian?
Yes.
A couple things. You had mentioned Rockwood is doing an excellent job in terms of everything. But you mentioned that there was 8 or 9 or a few things that the audit mentioned. Are they in our reports? Do we get a copy?
You can get a copy of them. They're just, basically what happens is during the review process, they will make comments to the CAFR, and it's really stuff like your fixed assets in your schedule back here doesn't agree to your basic financial statement or something like that.
Okay.
It's just very immaterial stuff.
Okay.
But if there's something that's off or something, and then sometimes they'll just say, consider footnoting this next year or expand this footnote to, address some issue. But it's not significant that we wouldn't get the certificate, but if you would like to see them, it's available.
No. The second thing, we had the audit by the state auditor 3 years ago, I think it was. Do you look at any of those to see if those things have been taken care of, or is that part of it?
We did in the year after the audit, which was a couple years ago. We always looked to make sure that anything
They were pretty well
come up
taken
with-
care of. They were all taken care of.
Correct, that's correct.
Okay. The last thing. Can you give us a comparison of how Rockwood did on this audit versus possibly other districts that you audit, or do you go down that trail?
Well, I mean, we audited about 12 districts, and, we had no findings this year, so that's always a good sign. No weaknesses in internal controls. I would say that of the districts that we do, you're comparable with the other large districts in the St. Louis County that we audit in the St. Louis metropolitan area. So,
You're not going to say that we're above everybody else?
but that's a matter of opinion, I would say. But,
Okay, good.
I mean, you're not getting any, material weaknesses and that sort of thing. So those are the type of things that you'd be looking for as a board.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Anybody else have any questions or comments? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
The motion on the floor is to approve the reports. So all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Ms. Vito, that passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next item is informational, and it's about the Special Education Survey and Partnership Agreement.
Yes, and as our team is coming forward, I'm going to give you a little bit of background on why I brought this presentation to you, and it's a little bit twofold, and the pieces are connected. Start with the survey. Last year, I had some candid conversation with some community members and parents and some historic perspectives about some things relating to our special education services in the Rockwood School District. And I thought it would be a good opportunity for us we can look at a lot of data from special school districts, sometimes pertaining to us, but also pertaining to the special school district in general. I thought it would be a good idea for us to do our own survey, to somewhat of a satisfaction survey, a fact-finding survey to our parents, specific to those that are that have children that are utilizing services from special school district in our partnership with them. So that is part of the piece is that we're talking about that survey tonight. Couple that with the fact that a couple of years ago, then Superintendent John Carey, as part of special school district's continuous improvement process, they really set out on what I feel was the creation of a somewhat of a comprehensive school improvement plan in conjunction with partner district superintendents. So it's something I was involved in from the beginning, and it really had to do with somewhat of what they call a partnership agreement that deals with how we do business together, how we partner together. And over the couple of years, we talked about and collaborated on a model that included expectations about how we utilize staffing, between the two districts, how we utilize professional development, clarifying responsibilities of the partner districts, student services, collaboration to enhance continuous improvement, how we access student data, because we're two partnering districts utilizing student data, the transportation piece, technology, space allocation, and career technical education. That was kind of covered in what we came up with. And some ways of doing these things and improving upon these things were discussed, and that became what we're referring to as the new partnership agreement that we will study a lot the second semester. We don't feel that it really creates many changes in how we facilitate the partnership. But what I thought it was an opportunity, knowing that, now having that background about what the partnership agreement is, an opportunity to look at what our survey found and opportunities to maybe address some things in the survey related to especially the partnership agreement and how we're going to do business going forward. So that's somewhat the short version and the foundation of why our good folks here. We've got obviously Glenn, and we've got Dr. Brown, Dr. Smith, and Dr. Bender. Just a wealth, fountainheads of knowledge sitting there before you. So they can share all kinds of stuff. I'm going to turn it over to them and let them start with the survey and give us a little information on that.
All right, well, thank you for that introduction. So basically, it started with conversation of, we want to know more. So the purpose of our survey was simply to get more information from our parents of students who have a disability, an identified disability, either under Section 504 or an IEP, IDEA. And so we actually have 4 categories of students that have those identifications by the different levels. So we have a preschool program that services students that have a disability, and then of course our elementary, our middle school, and then high school, actually all the way up to age 21. So the number of people that we sent the survey out to was 4,804. We had a pretty good return as far as surveys go. It was 19%, and so that's pretty close to 20%, 1/5. That's actually a pretty good result. And so like any survey, we're trying to get perceptual information from parents to just see what they're thinking are areas of strength and areas that we can continue to improve on. So obviously this is all part of a continuous improvement model. And I can answer your question, Dr. Kinder, before you ask it. I'm sure we're the only district who has done this.
Good.
So we were out in front, and then it was a perfect marriage that this partnership agreement was also being kind of culminated with having the district and SSD sign off on a new partnership agreement. So we feel like we're in a really good place to be able to move forward. I love the quote that's on this. So we asked parents 19 different questions that they responded to, and those were in some categories, which Glenn is going to tell us about in a little bit. But we also had a section for their comments. And one of those we have up there. You should be extremely proud of your staff. I'm blessed and thankful to have such an amazing team walk with me and my son. And today I received a similar email from a parent who just went through this process today. And so occasionally we get that, but it's nice to hear that even on a survey. Again, it's important for you to understand that we did have parents that took this survey that had kids in all different levels, and then some parents who had more than one child that they might be responding for, and so they might have taken the survey in light of a elementary student and maybe in light of a high school student. Tell us a little bit more.
So we categorize our questions into 3 different domains: services and support that dealt with the IEP and 504 services that students are receiving in the school; collaboration that dealt with really the communications going back and forth between our gen ed teachers and the families at home; also special education teachers and the families at home as well; and the knowledge and understanding. regarding the IEP process, how IEPs work, and understanding of the services that are available for their students. These questions were on a 4-point Likert scale, and the graphic you see before you is just a quick overview of those questions grouped into those domains and the strength of each domain there on a 4-point scale. Overall, all the categories came out with very positive remarks. There were comments throughout the survey also that helped us illustrate areas of potential growth as well during that survey. The next few slides will demonstrate a few questions from each domain that were asked in there.
So this one talks about professional development, and one of the things that we've been careful about is looking at what are the ways that we can link our professional development together. Because the teachers, we've got about 455 employees in Rockwood working for the benefit of the Rockwood students. So what is it that we can do when we talk to the curriculum directors and all the people, is what can we do to link the professional development so that we're not telling our staff something different than you're telling the Rockwood staff, so that whether a parent gets a hold of the gen ed teacher or the IEP case manager, that there's knowledge of the curriculum, there's knowledge of instruction for that student, and supporting their special ed needs for that Rockwood curriculum. And the way to get there is to make sure we talk and use the same language with both groups of staff, make sure they have access to the same materials, and you've been very careful to do that and really actually increase your budget to make sure that there are more Rockwood materials in those special ed rooms. So that's something that we've been working on for continuous improvement, and we're excited to see that the parents are in the agree column. But because it's continuous improvement, we can't stop, because every time you look at a new curriculum and develop it, we need to make sure that we pump that professional development for both groups at the same time.
If I could add a comment in there too, it's really effective the way Ginny explained that, because I think that's an example in the past, and even though we have high marks and we feel good about that, but we also were aware of examples in our history where that wasn't so good. Or as she described, where you've got a situation where parents want to advocate for their children, and if they're before this staff member, in their minds, they understand SSD and Rockwood School District, but they don't necessarily, at the end of the day, they don't care that this one's saying this or that one's saying that. They want it to be advocating for their child. And we can't afford to have that fragmented. We can't afford to do that. And we think, in the past, and I think that's not specific to our district, that has been some of the challenges. And that's what we discussed under that superintendent, under the professional development piece, that we really need to be aligned in that. And we need to make sure that both of our faculty members are partnering and on the same team and saying the same things to the parents. So the way you explained that was very, very good, and I just think it's a good point to put an exclamation point on that is an area of growth, regardless of the high marks, that we can continue to improve to make sure we're aligned.
The next area is really piggybacks very nicely with that. It's all about strengthening our collaboration among all educators. We very much believe that team approach among all educators to support our students in Rockwood is a key part of how we do business. And the survey indicates that 79% of respondents feel confident that our special and regular ed educators are working in collaboration to support their students in the school setting. Sorry for my cold. But it's an area that we've identified that we want to continue to work on through that collaboration to enhance continuous improvement for our students and to build up that collaborative approach. We spend in our group a lot of time talking about how can we develop support to strengthen that collaborative approach between special and general educators. Some of those efforts have focused a lot on the curriculum and instructional supports. Our team, special education, along with the curriculum department, in conjunction with the PD, focused very much on making sure those K-12, K-5 teachers were ready to implement the new ELA curriculum. So as Jenny indicated, that all students were getting teachers that had the same training and knowledge of the new curriculum. Some other efforts that we've taken in the past year or so and are continuing to do as we move forward is include the special education perspective in various committees, such as the RTI committee, the curriculum committees, and things of that nature, so that we have that full comprehensive perspective, making sure that the needs of students with disabilities are part of those discussions. It's really our goal to find ways to let our special and general ed teachers and administrators continue to work and learn together, because that time together will help us to strengthen the collaboration.
No, I'm fine.
So our next steps, as Dr. Knost alluded to, is to take this new partnership agreement, take this information from the survey, which we've just touched upon, get some key people across all of our different locations and that represent different pieces, such as PD and some of these areas that we've talked about, and to come together and formalize it a little bit more. And let's review the new document, let's review the survey, what are we doing well in, and what do we really need to identify and focus on, as if we were writing kind of a school plan. This is our goal, and here are some actions that we're going to do, and yet prioritize it so it's actually doable, so that we can continue to move forward. And again, it is a continuous improvement model. These two things came together at just the right time, and we'll just continue to move forward doing what we know is best for all of our kids. Any questions?
When a survey like this comes back and it's overwhelmingly positive like this one is, it's always very gratifying, but when that happens, sometimes the biggest value is in the comments. Did you find anything that surprised you or made you go, hadn't thought of that? Anything really stand out?
I think to me what really stood out was just we've got to really work hard to always collaborate, to get the counseling staff and the teachers and the special educators that are working with the kids all on board to know and understand whatever it is that's identified in that IEP to help that student continuously be a learner, so that they don't fall behind, but that they're always growing and learning.
I think what we always learn when we do surveys, specific to your point, that it is nice to have overwhelmingly good things, but and that is a good rate of return. Mm-hmm. There's a whole lot of people out there that did not comment, so we have to be humble in our analyses. And of course, for the sake of a presentation, we're showing you domains, but each of those domains had significant numbers of questions that we can learn from. And while it's predominantly positive, it's not all positive. And so it just reinforces that when we're talking about kids, it's never okay. We're never okay with letting one child slip through the cracks. And so what we take from surveys like this is that we have to continue to get better. And I think that was pretty loud and clear in what we learned. And that's what we're embracing. Great.
It's a great survey. I think it's a great start. You really had 4 questions, but you've already answered 2 of them, so I'll ask 2 others real quick. Have you thought about it, or you gotten to the point where you're going to do a follow-up surveying the teachers, the special ed teachers, and see what their thoughts are on this? That would be one thing. That may be something your committee can work on.
Absolutely. No, we haven't really talked about any additional surveys, but as that committee comes together, I think we'll need to tease out our next steps.
The other one is, these are really good scores. The closer you get to 4, the better it is, but are these answers a statement about SSD teachers, or Rockwood teachers in general, or a combination of both? Or
in a lot of cases,
can you separate those?
In a lot of cases, it's a combination of both, because we're asking about the communication that's going back and forth between our gen ed teachers and our families at home, and also between how they feel there's actually questions in there about the collaboration between teachers and special education teachers and how they feel. Like one of the questions on there that was on the last slide, I believe, was regarding how well families felt the gen ed teacher and the special education teacher work well together.
Good. Thanks.
It's everyone's responsibility.
It's true.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Very nice presentation.
Thank you all.
Okay, the next agenda item is a secondary schools program review. This is informational only, and I think Dr. Counts is going to join us.
Good evening. So I'm going to talk with you tonight about our secondary schools program review. So first of all, just a little bit about why we're doing this. Why are we doing a secondary review? As you may remember, outlined in CSIP, it asks for, or one of our strategies is to conduct a secondary review. So we're starting with phase one, the middle school phase of that. We're calling that middle school program design. That committee work has already begun, and I'll outline a little bit of that for you tonight. And then phase two, it will be the high school portion. Also, we'll look at a program design, and I'll talk to you a little bit about what that means, the title of program design. And then that is scheduled to tentatively begin next fall. We've talked a little bit about the possibility of the high school coming on board sooner, because some of those topics obviously will overlap. Some of the things that are valid and relevant in a middle school study may kind of merge into high school. So if there's an opportunity for a high school committee to start alongside middle school, we'll address that as our work gets going later this spring. So purpose, this is something that I shared with the working committee. We had our first working committee on December 1st, and just to get, there's about 50 people on that committee, and just to get people thinking about why we're here, what is the work we're doing, and we really wanted to focus on the fact that there's nothing broken in our middle schools. We're not here to fix anything. We've got great programs, we've got great curriculum, teachers, parent support. We've got a lot of really good things going on in our middle schools. So this program review is not about necessarily fixing something, but taking a look at what we're currently doing, and is there a way to do it better? Are there things that we need to do more of, less of, things like that. So we really wanted to talk about that continuous improvement, and that we're not just meeting one certain stopping point, but it's always continual growth and improvement. So the committee work for the middle school program design is set up into two committees, very similar to how we've run committee work throughout the district. We have a steering committee that is about 13, I think it's about 13 people, includes teachers, administrators. RNEA is represented on that committee, and that's really the group that organizes the agendas for the working committee. The second committee is the working committee. That's right now, as I said, about 50 people on that committee. That's comprised of parents, teachers, administrators, students. We have some students that are primarily freshmen and sophomores that have lived through middle school in our district from all 6 middle schools. So their voices have been, they were just really refreshing and had some really great insights. So we're excited to have them on our committee. We have lots of other district representatives on that working committee as well. Technology is represented, curriculum, professional learning. So we just have a lot of different representatives on that committee. We wanted to make sure we had a very good cross-section of the entire district as we begin this work. So here's our timelines for the middle school portion of this secondary review. So you can see there's the dates for the steering committee, the working committee, and then the regular updates that I will provide to you.
Towards the end of the program.
So then the work that we've started, and this is a list of kind of big picture, the work that will happen in this working committee. And like I said, we're just kind of on the front lines of this, just starting this, but determining our vision and where we want to go with this review, setting priorities, and I'll talk with you a little bit about that because we did start that work at the first working committee. One thing that was really, I felt important, and the steering committee helped round out this conversation that I had with the working committee, was for the working committee to really understand our commitment to this work, meaning our commitment from a district standpoint, in that we really want this to be an inclusive process. We want inclusive leadership. We want to make sure we get the voices of the community and of the district at large. So we really want this to kind of be a two-way process, that there's not a defined agenda here. You know, this was not a situation that we came into this committee and we were set out to study X, Y, and Z. We really are going to allow the working committee, with the voice of the community at large, define what are those things that we think are most important to study. And of course, we have to set those priorities, and I'll talk about that in a minute because it's a big task. But we really did want the committee, the working committee, to understand that we want this to be an inclusive process. We want to take time for listening and reflecting and make sure that we have time to study the important issues, and we're not just rushing into something to get to a set decision, that we want to allow people time to have a voice and to reflect and listen to those items. So then we started with the question for the working committee, what do we want the middle school experience to be for our students? And that's where the title of this program review came into fruition. As the steering committee, we started talking about all kinds of things that make up a middle school program. That middle school is more than just academics. It's more than just extracurricular. There's so many things that go into an effective school program, really at any level, whether it's early childhood, elementary, middle, or high school. It's more than just the academics. So we really wanted to kind of spread our wings a little bit and give the committee an opportunity to help us define what's an ideal middle school program. What do we want that to encompass? And that could include anything from interventions for students. It could include after-school activities. It could talk about social emotional support for students, of course academics, the daily schedule. So all of those things are topics that are starting to surface, but we didn't want to limit ourselves to just studying the daily schedule, in the course of the day. We wanted to look at all components that make up middle school and then determine what are the things we're happy with and we're getting results, that data's telling us that we're doing well, and then what are the things that we want to look at for improvement. So then with the working committee, we went about setting priorities, and we did an activity in which we did a pairing activity where people were allowed to just list out their personal areas of interest and what were the items that they felt were the top priority for us to begin our work and to begin studying. And so through a lot of paring down, we did a little post-it note activity. These were kind of the top areas that bubbled to the top, if you will, that we saw the most post-it notes. Everyone was given 10, so we tried to rate it in. You have 50 people times 10 post-it notes. You can imagine we started out very broad, but ironically we ended up with more categories alike than different. So we were really able to pare that down to probably about 12 to 15 top priorities, but these were definitely the ones that surfaced to the top. So meeting student needs, there were a lot of variations of this, but that was a top priority. The highest priority of people had some response around that topic of how do we meet students' needs socially and emotionally, the RTI process, and how are we differentiating for kids and meeting kids where they are to meet them at all levels. So that was probably the one that had the most number of responses. Next was extracurricular activities and transportation. So those two linked together. Obviously, the desire and the need or want for transportation for our after-school activities so that more students can participate and we can offer more things for students. Scheduling and curricular topics were kind of married when you looked at the specific detail of what people wrote on their post-it notes. A lot of those kind of carried over with each other. So I'm talking about how do we schedule our day? Is that a traditional schedule versus a block schedule? And then of course curricular topics fall right into that, because things such as what do we offer every day? Do we offer math every day or PE every day? How do we offer our exploratory courses? How do we offer gifted education? So those are some of the curricular topics that we kind of just lumped together. So now the real work is to take these topics and really start paring them down. And you can see these are very broad-based right now. And so what does this really mean? And what are the items in these categories? And maybe a few others that we really want to prioritize and set our work. One that I didn't put on here, and that's totally my mistake because I've revised this PowerPoint and used this PowerPoint several times, but there was one other bullet point on here that I thought I had included that bubbled up, but it was quite a bit if you went in rank order of number of responses, was the desire to look at a later start time for middle schools. And as we all know, that's kind of one of those topics that, people are on both sides of that opinion, and that's an issue that comes up time and again. So, that's something that we will definitely look at. It won't be the primary focus of this committee, but it's definitely something as it bubbles up that we will look at. And in fact, Dr. Knos and I have talked about potentially doing a survey around just that topic. So we really, because right now, I think there were 18 Post-it notes that came up on that topic, but that's obviously not a representation of, a district our size of where people are on that topic. So that's something that we'll have to dig a little deeper to determine if that's a valid topic to study. We also did an activity in which I asked the working committee to outline middle school strengths, and I thought this was really important and it was really valuable because obviously when we're talking about, we called it areas of interest. We asked people to write your top 10 areas of interest that you would like to study. You started hearing a pattern of, well, we need more of this, or we need less of this, or I wish we could do this. And so it kind of turned into a wish list, if you will. And so then I wanted people to have the opportunity to take a step back. We've made our wish list, if you will, or our desires, and then really focus on what are we doing well, and what are we proud of, and what do we know we are good at. And so these were some of the top things we saw. The list had about 30 different items on it, but these were some of the things that, again, teachers, parents, students, staff across the district said we're doing a really good job of at middle school. So I thought that was important, just to keep that positive momentum that we've got a lot of great things going on, and while the wish list might look very long, there's a lot of things that we're doing great work in. Our communication, I think this is a really important part of the process, that two-way communication I mentioned earlier. I think it's very important that our community at large is aware of this work. I specifically shared with the working committee that one of their roles is to be this representative and to go back to their respective communities, even if they're a parent or a student, of course teachers and administrators, but to really share this work and provide that two-way communication. And then of course, Kathy always does fantastic work and will keep our website updated as we have notes and agendas and PowerPoints and things like that. So this will be a way that we can keep our community informed. And that's all I have. Any questions?
This is good. I just went to your link that has everything you're doing. It's good.
Thank you.
I have a couple questions out of ignorance. Does the middle school use a traditional schedule, a block schedule, or a modified? Or is it
Modified.
That's what I thought. Is it still true that in the middle schools that they basically are all lined up together, that what one does, they all do, in terms of starting times, offering of courses to a certain degree?
For the most part, yeah. I mean, their start times are all the same, and the course offerings are the same.
And the discipline is a fairly similar discipline line, even though you have some modifications, probably. Is that right?
You mean like behavior discipline? Is that
Yes,
what kind of?
yeah.
Mhm. I mean, they follow the same discipline handbook, the procedures, yeah.
Good, thank you.
This is good. I think this, I'm sorry. This is really good. I mean, I think, oftentimes we talk about the elementary schools, we talk about our high school kids, and the middle school kids just kind of get lost. And I'm just a big believer that, every step of your life should be the best time of your life. So I think this is, I like what's on this list, and I look forward to these updates because I think this is a lot of good stuff.
Thank you. And I didn't mention them specifically, but on the working committee, we have some elementary representatives and some high school representatives, because obviously anything we do at one level will impact across the district. And their perspectives are really valuable too. They had some really great insights on looking at that transition from both sides. So.
Well, especially when you're talking about RTI, the kids don't just walk into middle school and all of a sudden it's the middle school's responsibility.
Exactly.
It's should have, I should say should have been, but hopefully it's been a continuous process where kids are identified earlier and earlier.
Exactly.
I think Laura Lee just solidified the rationale for it, for middle school to be its own piece instead of just the secondary review, which is to be honest, and kind of what I had envisioned in understanding it, that we would look at all of the secondary schools at the same time. But I think that's a good reason why it's good that it's going this route, because there's a lot to look at and a lot to consider, independent of the high schools and the elementary schools, just that pertain to middle schools.
Will you basically finish the middle school preliminaries at the end of this year, then to a similar type situation?
That is a great question that I don't know the answer to. We've talked about that, kind of where to start. Do we run them both at the same time? We made the decision to run them separately. So someone on the steering committee used the word organic, and that has just kind of been a theme throughout this process. So we're kind of letting things just develop organically and see where this committee takes us. Obviously, we want to start the high school review next year, but I'm not sure that the middle school review will be complete. I can see that this might just be a year of developing our priorities. Obviously, we have to determine what research we need to look at, defining our current reality. So that may just be the work of this year, and then maybe next year middle school's continuing with really looking at what recommendations we want to make as we pick up the high school.
Do we have the manpower to do that to them at the time?
Sure, absolutely.
Dr. Counts.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else have any questions?
I think it's woman power.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you guys.
Sure.
The next agenda item is also discussion, and it's a proposed budget for the 2016-2017 school year.
Oh, is your budget now?
We do have an update for the 2016 year, as well as preliminary operating budget for 17. First slide just shows kind of a summary of what our timeline is for this year. So we will be back in June with the formal adoption, but that just kind of provides a quick timeline of what's going on. So the first thing we wanted to kind of touch base on was the local property taxes. There's a lot of information on the slide. Just a couple things I wanted to point out. Calendar year 2015, which falls within fiscal year 2016, was a reassessment year. So we saw approximately $124 million increase in assessed valuation for this year. So this was all on the tax rate that was set this past fall in September. Now, calendar year 2016, which falls into fiscal year 2017, is a non-reassessment year. So we usually, during that time frame, we'll see no increase in assessed valuation. So that's why you see that we don't have any increase in fiscal year 17. But we do estimate that we will pick up some new construction and new personal property, which relates to our overall increase in our assessed valuation. So about a 1% increase in assessed valuation. With that, our operating tax rate is expected to decrease a couple pennies related to kind of the fallout from the impact on our tax rate for the recoupment process that the district partakes in. So we have a small increase in the tax rate, but overall revenue from assessed taxes is approximately going to increase about $700,000. Weighted average daily attendance. So this factor has a revenue impact in two sources: in our basic formula from the state, as well as the Proposition C revenue that we get locally. So just a quick update that we are in a declining enrollment. So as the table shows, we will use the 2014-15 WADA, and that's because through the state formula for basic formula, we're able to use the highest of the current WADA or the previous two school years. So 14-15 school year was our highest, so we estimate that WADA will be used in our calculation through the fiscal year 2017.
Next year we'll have to use 215-16?
For the basic formula, we'll still use the 14-15 school year.
For how long?
FY17 will be the last year.
Then you'll go probably to 215-16.
Yeah.
Okay.
If there would be no changes in enrollment. Now, Proposition C, which is the sales tax revenue that we get. Now, there is a change in the WADA. WADA is used in the formula, but it does go back to the previous school year's WADA. So With declining enrollment, we are anticipating a decrease in that, but that's offset by an increase in the amount paid per WADA, which is based off of some current information that we have from DESI that we're anticipating about a 1% increase in that. So essentially, we're staying flat and breaking even related to those factors.
We haven't had an increase in a few years though, have we?
It's been increasing approximately 1% the last couple of years for the Proposition C.
I must be confusing that with the legislators. Yeah.
The formula hasn't, but,
Okay.
but this just has sales increase across the state. This
Oh, okay.
Relative proxy.
Oh, yeah, sales tax, it does say that.
Just gonna let you work through that, you know.
And getting back to the basic formula, as we kind of mentioned, the WADA will carry forward for the next 2 school years. So what we have currently through information from legislation as well as other DESI guidance, all the factors that are in the formula will remain the same. So we do, it will relatively be flat in state formula for next year. There's a small increase, but that's related to some other factors that are in the formula outside of what's related to the state legislation. We've taken a look at all the other revenue sources that we have and current projections, and based off information we currently have, we are seeing that all other sources are going to stay relatively constant, including federal revenue. So revenue will be relatively flat. And this kind of provides a summary of that. For the current fiscal year in 16, we are seeing estimating an increase of about $400,000 in revenue, and then for 17, we're seeing about a $500,000 increase over FY16. This chart just shows as a percentage the amount of revenue that's funded through local sources. So as you can see, 78% accounts for our operating revenue. Of the local revenue, 82% is related to our assessed taxes. As part of our budget process, we collect budget requests across the district from the operating budgets and accumulate those. As part of the budget meetings, Cabinet meets throughout the month of November. I believe there were 4 meetings that they had. So we accumulate all that information, and at the beginning of those meetings, Cabinet started out with approximately expenditures exceeding revenue of about $6.5 million. And then through the end of the process and what is being at least presented tonight in the preliminary budget, it is a balanced budget.
Is that $6.5 million of the total budget or $6.5 million in the operational budget?
Operation budget.
There's things to keep in mind, and we're going to have that challenge. We did last year, we did this year, even greater. And there's things that we have to consider. We're kind of dealing with some of the decisions from the past, the relatively flat, revenue. But for instance, curriculum is a big expense in a school district like ours, and we froze curriculum for a number of years. So when you put a cycle back in place, and it's not just people say, oh, curriculum, it's textbooks. I mean, it's everything related to the implementation of a new piece of curriculum, supplies in the classroom and the training for it. It's
the development of the curriculum.
Yeah, the development of it's an extensive amount of money. That's one example. So it's a challenge. It's a challenge for us, and we spend a good amount of time sorting through that and having some courageous conversations and working collaboratively, which we do that very well. But I think we just need to be used to that balancing the budget is going to be difficult every year, but we're committed to that. I'm committed to that. I said that to the board when you hired me, that I was committed to submitting balanced budgets, and we're going to stay committed.
So you have it at the point now where the proposed is a balanced budget next year. I saw that later on. But does it still give you flexibility in here for one department to say, whoa, I need more money, and another department to say, I'll give you money? Do you still have flexibility to do that?
Well, I think we do. The answer is yes. We have flexibility all the way until June when you approve the budget. There's a lot of things that are going to occur between now and June that could impact the budget. So, and we're going to be working through those things. But the idea, really, I think what we've put together is we expect that to be pretty much the model that we move forward with, and we don't expect to have situations, we've already done that, really. We've already done what you described. So there's just some moving factors out there that we still have to deal with in the spring.
The whole process of budget development is to try to get all of the requests in at one time, because it's a process of trade-offs. Do we want to do this or do we want to do this? So we try not to, we try to accumulate them all just prior to our November meetings, and then we spend the month of November making all those trade-offs to get the budget. Now, there are some things that are not known at that point in time, and we have to consider those later, but for the most part, we want everything to come in at that one time.
Yeah, I was thinking along the line of principles, but that's only a small part of it. You're talking about everything else at the central office, transportation, everything.
Right.
Okay.
And we do have, this might be a good time to interject too, we're currently, the student transportation bid is up, and we're still going through all that too, so that's another consideration that's something that was not, we kind of made an estimate, but we're still working on that, so that could change this a little bit, but that's an example of something that came after our original development of the budget.
An update on current year operating budget. Essentially, we're within $500,000 of our adopted budget, which is, for this time of year, is pretty typical. We start out with an accelerated projection, but typically as the school year goes on, we see some fallback in the budget. So we expect to be within our budget towards the end of the year.
One thing that we've tried to do is, instead of trying to anticipate the budget at the beginning of the year, we're trying to anticipate where it's going to be at the end of the year, because we know that there's fallout, and we've been budgeting that budget recapture. So it happens throughout the year. So right now we're within $500,000 to meet the budget. We really think we're going to be right on budget by the end of the year.
So you're anticipating a fund balance of about 23% at the end of the year?
Correct.
But that should improve slightly.
Yeah.
What caused the local revenue to drop so much?
The
local revenue to drop 900,000? Anticipated?
We had a change in our interest income that we received from the from the county regarding our taxes. So we had a lot more money that was collected prior to January 1, so we received less interest on delinquent taxes essentially. And we also had a change in our enrollment numbers for the big program.
Okay. Now, you also gained $1 million in state and federal grants, but I thought you said that was sort of flat.
You're talking about between our budget for this year and our projection for this year, and I think when he talked about flat, he's talking about
it was just for this year.
Projection for this year versus what we think was going to happen for next year.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Okay. But you gained $1 million in grants and so forth. Is that from writing grants, or what is that from?
Well, what we do is we start out the year and we make sure that the grant revenue is equal to the grant expenditures, and we're not as concerned with the total dollar amount because we know that they're balanced. And so when we got the final approvals, the increased amount was equal to the expenditure, so it doesn't really change the bottom line, but it increased. You might know exactly which program.
Yeah. Usually we see that in Title I programs where the money, and then also related to the state money, we had some changes in our state factors that we did not budget for because we didn't have the information when the budget was adopted that was updated after July 1 that improved our state money.
And these grants will spend that money too. We won't turn any money back over, will we?
There is some fallout in the money, but those grants do allow for carryover.
Oh, okay.
So if it's not spent within this fiscal year, we could certainly, it gets included in next year's budget.
Good, thank you.
And all of that is subject to approval by DESI. So we have to work through DESI to get that approval. And then this just provides a recap of where we expect to end this year. As kind of mentioned, we expect to be at 49.8 million fund balance for operating, and then next year essentially remain at 49.8, which is above our 22% target.
So we're not going to be in trouble like some of these other districts that are trying to pass tax levies and they failed and having to cut a whole bunch of money in the near future.
we continue with the goal of balancing. But you know, one of the reasons why we put in the information in there about the request, and we're not talking about, you know, just put anything on your list. We're talking about things that departments and the schools felt are necessary, and we're off by the 6.5 million. So we're having to make some pretty tough decisions. So at some point, if the revenue remains flat and we have these demands on the budget, we're going to have to consider at what point in time we need to make some adjustments. Of course, one of the things, you know, with the interest rates being low, the inflation rate was 0.8%. So during the reassessment, we actually had about a 4 to 5% increase in assessed valuation. But under the Hancock Amendment, that 2-year increase in assessed valuation was limited to that 0.8% increase. So inflation probably will be picking up over time, which will allow us to pick up some additional monies there. So it's unknown as to what might happen in the future, but you know, it's always a challenge. There are a lot of really worthwhile programs out there that we'd like to be able to fund, and we just you know, trying to hold the line.
That $6.5 million, you're taking care of internally. You're not going to bring it to us and say, here, you decide. Are you? It's taken care of internally?
No, we've made those decisions, and some of those things, again, some of it we push it off to consider. You know, and part of that prioritizing is maybe this is something that's needed, but it's not absolutely crucial that we do it this year. We push this off to next year. But you know, to Tim's point, as we do that every time, we monitor and watch the revenue, and I don't anticipate that in the near future, but talking way down the line, if revenue doesn't pick up significantly, then those decisions become more difficult because you can only kick things down the line so long. But having said all that, I think comparing to some of the examples you're giving, we're in very good shape.
I'm just amazed how you guys can project this stuff from one year to the next. I can't even project my budget from one day to the next. I'm really impressed. I'm impressed that you've done such an excellent job last several years.
Any questions?
Good job.
Yep, good job.
Okay, very good presentation. Thank you, gentlemen. Hey, Mr. Rooney's going to stick around for the next one. Bond issue purchases over and related contracts over $150,000. Need a motion to approve the bond issue purchases and related contracts over $150,000 from Foresight Services Incorporated for district-wide roof improvement projects in fiscal year 16. Chris, welcome.
Good evening.
Oh, so moved? Did someone say that? Oh.
Right, we have a motion in a second.
I have a lordly motion and second. James Folks.
All right, good evening. We just have one item tonight, but it is a significant amount of money. It is for the design services for our roofing package coming up this upcoming summer at 8 locations. I believe it's actually 9 locations this summer. So it's the design services for those projects.
Did we do something similar the last board meeting or 2 board meetings ago for a different group?
Yes, we've got design teams that are working on HVAC, roofing, civil engineers that are engaged on projects. We have geotechnical engineers that are engaged on projects. So what you're seeing come before you for approval is the culmination of all these projects and the design teams we need to help facilitate the process.
Are there any more of these that'll come forward, the design things, or is this the last one?
I believe this is about it. The HVAC, I think, came through last meeting. The architects are on board for all of our brick and mortar projects. Yeah. There may be a couple civil engineering things that come up with the large quantities. This should be the end of that.
You have the STEM, all that's taken care of, the classrooms?
Correct. We have an architect on board for those, and that is some of the civil and the geotechnical that you've seen for Marquette.
Good, great, thanks.
We've seen several of these, pretty standard level fee, and we select them based on competency, not bids. So that's correct. Any other questions or comments? All right, the motion is to approve this expenditure. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed say no. Thank you, Peter, that passes. Thank you, gentlemen. The next item is a presentation on the COPE committee, and I think Dr. Kinder is going to be doing this.
Well, since I got selected for this by unanimous vote from the other two, I'm going to milk it for everything I can. I want to thank Jamie and Laura Lee and Kathy, and, oh, my partner over there is going to run it. I'm going to need help. We are actually creating a newsletter through COPE after we meet, and that's what we're showing to you tonight as board members. And the question is, how do you find it? It's not on our app yet, is it? Is it going on the app?
Well, that would be a decision of the code. Currently, the app just contains Board of Education information, and it doesn't contain committee information. And how you would find it would be in the community, and then you'd go under district or Board of Education. That would be great. And committees, thank you, Debbie.
Committee?
And there we are.
And then resources for review, your first subcommittee.
On the right side.
Yes, then you click on that. Up to there, it's similar to what is on the COPE committee thing. There is the newsletter that Kathy and her team created. I'd love to say we did it, but it wasn't. It was Kathy.
It's true.
And so for you guys, you can find it. Like it's right here.
It's in essence putting out the calendar of things that are coming up, which we've talked about.
Yeah, because we did talk about that, not only activities in the school, but things that were particular for the Board of Education that we needed to be aware of that we could go to. An example are a couple of the legislative breakfasts coming up, and we'll be putting those out. We've already got some of those out. Putting that information out so you can know whether you want to go to those. Probably the SRO breakfast last week would have been something like that. Similar things like that pertain to us particular. Because I think we were getting the feeling that those things are out there and getting inundated with all this other stuff that we were sort of losing that in the trees or in the forest, whatever it was. So we thought that would be good. And we have, can you scroll back up a little bit, Debbie? Thank you, dear. All right, thank you, Debbie. Out here. And where does it, a lot of this stuff is also stuff that's in other places in the board, but now, if you want to scroll down and find things particular for us as board members, events and so forth, where does that come in?
It's right in the
Say in Rockwood schools. So this is just currently a PDF to introduce the Board of Education to the new e-newsletter. But we're going to go ahead and send it to you in your email addresses. And when you click on that, those links, they'll tell you more information. If you want to scroll down just a little bit, that very last thing gives you more information on the school board calendar. Those are the options that we provide you. Usually, in the past, we've done a print document, and this is an online version that will continually update, and the COPE committee can also add information to this as well to make sure all school board members have that information.
Good. Did I miss anything, Jamie, or?
Just the in Rockwood news again, I think you had mentioned that, you know, somehow that got kind of lost in the shuffle here, so that's back on there, which is great. And the social media, very nice picture of you and kid superintendent. So everything in a much, and then continuing on to the app, everything in a much more central place, so. Anyone, Jamie, need something I missed, or he missed?
No, I think it's good. The middle section will highlight things by month, which is nice, so you can get a glance at things you could sign up for and RSVP for, right there.
This is really for us, but it's also for the public. They can look at it too. I think that's it.
I just wish the public very nice.
Good job, Kathy.
Great, thank you. Next item is a proposed agenda for the January 7th board meeting. As we heard earlier, we're going to intentionally keep that somewhat light because of other things going on. So if you can...
Is that the one where they're going to steam bus?
Yes, yeah. We'll be real honest with you. When we first met about this agenda, we didn't have anything on the open session. And that's sometimes deceiving to people. They go, well, why are you gonna meet? Well, there's still business to be done. We still probably have closed session things that we need to accomplish, and all of the consent agenda, the business and such, still needs to be handled. So we thought that was okay. But we added a few things. I mentioned having Bob Deneau come and do a very, very short explanation of the mobile van, and then hopefully the idea would be that we would conclude the meeting early. For anybody would be welcome, definitely for the board to go out, and it's fun. Be prepared to play a little bit, because there's stuff to play with in that mobile van. Fun stuff.
As always, if anybody comes up with an item you would like to add to the January meeting before then, please give us enough notice to get that looked at and put on the agenda. Next item is a future agenda presentations and events to attend. I don't know if we have anything specific. As everybody probably knows even more intensely than I do, tomorrow is the last day of this semester. Seems like we just had opening day and here we are. These things fly by in a hurry. It was a very, very successful semester in our district, and I think a lot of people here had a lot to do with that, so thank you all for that. Any other items to discuss? Anything any board member would like to bring up at this time? Hearing none, we will adjourn. Thank you. Have a great holidays.